Hey there, what's up? It's Matt. Today we're going to have a conversation about taking up space. Man, it is really important to show up in this world as your full self, as your whole entire self. I think that sometimes we decide to put barriers around ourselves when we show up in different spaces. We like to put ourselves into these tiny little boxes, and we end up getting stuck there, and we feel trapped sometimes, and we feel stagnant, and like we can't really tap into who we really are because we're too busy showing up as like this person in this scenario and this person in another scenario, and we just can't keep track of these different parts of us. Actually, we do keep track of these things quite well. Sometimes this happens like really like as a almost like a second nature type of thing. We just go into a different group of people and we just shift into this other person. And if this is happening a lot, like I said, we might not actually be aware of that. But it's important to kind of shed some light on the fact that that does happen. And if you are aware of you not showing up fully or not taking up space fully, that's okay. We're going to have a little conversation about what that can look like. And we're going to talk about how to actually show up and how to take up more space. So there's a lot of reasons why we choose to not take up space for any reason. One of the first ones is we get trapped in our own heads. We get stuck thinking about the implications of showing up in a certain scenario and taking up space, which goes along with my next point, which is that we worry a lot about what other people are going to say or think about us. Sometimes we can be really concerned for our safety depending on what you are showing up fully for. And that's why like I kind of title this with like a bunch of different areas of life where you might show up fully or not. So like I might sometimes be nervous to show up with my queerness or transness for a particular reason. In another situation, I might be kind of wanting to tone down my blackness, or another situation, I can want to seem like a neurotypical, right? There are tons of different areas of life where I'm tempted to be less of who I fully am in random scenarios, depending on the circumstance that I'm in. Yeah, it's exhausting. It really is exhausting, especially after a while. Like I said, you can just be going from different thing to different thing, trying to pretend to be something that you're not, and that can feel really exhausting after a while. Specifically for my neurodivergent friends, masking is exhausting. It really is tiring. Sometimes it's just better to just be yourself and like let your freak flag fly. See? Let your freak flag fly a little bit with neurodivergence. And I think that's one specifically more recently that I'm learning how to kind of like lean into a little bit more. But yeah, those are two of the reasons. I have a couple more. So another thing is that we have been taught or cultured to think that we are too much, right? We're too loud, like we act too queer, or we're too fill in the blank, right? There are tons of different ways that people communicate to us that we're just too much. I know that especially growing up in a fundamentalist religious environment that I did, I think oftentimes I was just shown that I was just too much, and I had too many things, or sometimes it was just like too many problems, too many questions. But yeah, being taught that you're too much makes you feel like you need to keep yourself in this tiny little box. And when that happens to you when you're a child, especially, it's a little bit more difficult to get out of that zone as you get older. But yeah, we repeat a lot of the patterns that we learned when we were little, as we kind of move into adulthood. We think that we grow out of these things, but we don't. It just changes form. It's very sneaky. But that's how things tend to be. The other thing is there's oftentimes a lot of cultural stigma about different marginalized communities. I think sometimes we think that we need to show up in a certain way. Like, for example, I think, yeah, I'll just tell the story. So, like, for example, I think that sometimes me showing up as a Black person, I was also expected to show up in a way that wasn't authentic for me. I grew up around a lot of white kids. Went to most of the institutions I grew up in were PWIs, and if I would show up, they would like want me to be like the funny Black person. I don't always know exactly what that meant, but and like be ghetto, or you know what I'm saying, like just that typical media portrayal of being Black, and like that wasn't always me. So I would feel weird to show up with my own version, my own recipe of Blackness, because how would it be? I didn't know how it would be received by other people. So it would like try to be something that I wasn't. I hope that this is making sense with this example, but I could use examples for like almost every single area of my life where I maybe I think that I need to act a certain way, so I just pretend to be that thing. But that's just like not cool. I see someone messaging like, yeah, code switching, it really is exhausting. And after a little bit of time, man, sometimes we just end up defaulting to hanging out with people who are just like us because it's a little bit easier to be ourselves. And I think that's awesome to do. At the same time, I think it's also important for us to practice just being ourselves no matter where we are. That's, I think, a super important thing. The other one, and this one is big for me, or the reason why we don't show up fully is because we're scared of getting rejected. We're scared of people, like, it goes along with one of the other ones that I said, or one of the other points that I made, but just the fear of rejection. I know for me, as a neurodivergent person with ADHD, like, rejection, sensitive dysphoria, that's a kind of a term for the intensity of emotion that we can feel when we get rejected, can really fuck things up, let me tell you. And so if that means you will fake it to be accepted, you will do it because it feels better. I've talked several times about how most of my life I was just lying to people in order to be loved. And I thought that was okay to do. People kind of showed me that was okay to do, to just fake it, and then people would like me. And it worked. Like, people loved me, but they didn't love the real version of me. They loved this fake version of me that wasn't really the real me. So then when I started showing up with my full self, people started not liking me as much. And then it's painful, right? And then we feel bad, and we're like, I don't want to hurt. I don't want this pain of rejection. So we just stay the same. But all of this is exhausting. All of this is not fair. All of this shouldn't be the way that this stuff is, right? So let me talk to you a little bit about how we can work on starting to show up as our full selves, how we can take up space in this world. So one of the first things, y'all, get out of your head and get into the moment. Your head is beautiful. Your brain is beautiful. It's an amazing, magical computer thing that's always working, always getting ideas, always trying to keep you safe. So if that means it'll make you panic about your outfit, if it means it'll make you overthink everything you say so that you don't mess up and get hurt, your brain will do that. It'll say anything it needs to get you to shrink and feel safe in your environment. But you kind of have to say, like, okay, brain, like, we might have to scrap a little bit in this world. I'm gonna leave you alone for a second. I'm gonna dive into my body. I'm gonna feel what's going on. And I think getting into the body and getting into this present moment is such an important thing. Like, we can very well continue to just to panic about all the different things that are going on in our lives. But when we stop for a second and just check in with ourselves, maybe take a couple deep breaths, get into the moment, and just try something, right? That typically is a better way to do things. So this might look like chilling out on the pre-planning. I know that I can sometimes pre-plan conversations, pre-plan how I'm going to show up in a certain situation. the thing is I really don't know. And sometimes that pre-planning can cause quite a bit of anxiety. So get into the present moment. And when you show up, just be yourself, right? That's super important. And this goes with my next point, which is if you're gonna plan to mess up, plan to be awkward, plan for this to feel odd, because you're trying something different. And I'll repeat some of these points I think a little bit later, but you're gonna feel weird when you try these things. But and someone would like, you might literally say something and someone can look at you with like you have like 7 heads. And you have to learn to just be like, okay, maybe that was a little bit weird, but that's okay that it was a little bit weird. Don't worry so much about how weird you are. I think that's one of the cool things about being a unique individual, right? Like, of course we're gonna be weird because there's no one like us. You're gonna be weird because there's no one like you, right? That's what makes us so magical as beings. We get to be these like unique extensions of the universe, and we get to show up in this world in a really cool way. So don't smash that by trying to be fake. Just show up and be awkward and mess up. That's okay. All right. Next point is when you're just chilling out with yourself, like tune in and see what it feels like to feel authentic. Like sense what it would feel like to show up in a space as your full self. Like, does it feel good? Does it feel bad when you're doing this? Imagine what it would be like to be yourself and have people accept you. Like, what kinds of emotions does that bring up for you? For me, it brought up like a lot of positive feelings. Like thinking about being accepted was really great. But the thing is, I couldn't experience that without actually giving it a shot first. So the thing is, it's important to sense like, is this actually something that I want to do? Is this actually something that I want to be? And if it feels right for you, that is your sign to go for it. You need to follow your joy. So what makes you feel joyful inside is something that you should definitely pursue. So yeah, check in with yourself and see what feels good. The next thing is to find supportive people who are willing to help you take up space, people who are willing to be there to support you. Sometimes this can be in online spaces. This can be in real life situations as well. But just trying as much as you can to surround yourself with positivity. The other day, someone on one of the support groups that I'm a part of talked about having like a transition buddy, a transition like sibling. So like, the same can be similar if you're just trying to show up fully. So you can like have someone who kind of like shares that same marginalization as you. So maybe a fellow person of color, a fellow neurodivergent person, and like you're just saying like, maybe you're feeling nervous. Like when I go out in public, I'm nervous to bring my stim toy with me because I'm afraid people are gonna look at me weird. But maybe just texting that friend and saying like, hey friend, I'm nervous. And they can just like gas you up and tell you that it's okay for you to just show up as your full self. Like bring your stim toys, wear fidget jewelry that feels good for you, so that you can kind of show up as your authentic self. And the same with like transition. If you're gonna go out in like maybe different clothing than you've ever worn before, having someone to text you and be like, hey, like it's okay for you to show up like this and I'm rooting for you. It might feel really empowering in the moment. And the last tip that I have, and I've kind of been tapping around this the whole time, is to practice. We have to try these things and give them a shot. Really just showing up and giving it, like I said, give it a try. We have to practice because these things, for me, did not come naturally. Maybe when I was like really, really, really little, it was a little bit more natural for me to just be my whole self. But I was cultured and I learned to not be myself as I grew older. So now I'm trying to kind of relearn how to just be myself. And so expect yourself to take a little bit of time and practice, right? Be willing to try it out. Even if that means going to the grocery store as your full self. If that means when you're with a group of friends, like talking in a way that you would actually talk normally might be what it means to show up fully for yourself. Talking about the things that feel important to you. If you're a neurodivergent person, you might really like to talk about a specific subject and you might be nervous that other people aren't gonna vibe with it. Just try it anyway and see what happens. I think sometimes we also have struggles with like learning how to balance how much we talk in at least I have trouble learning how to balance how much I talk in conversations. So practicing and waiting for someone to say like, hey, I want to talk too. And then like just mess up and play around. Have people that you can bounce ideas off of, right? People who can help you navigate this journey. And building, like I said in the last step, building a community, having supportive people around this is a great way to make it feel easier to want to show up and take up space. So if you're looking for a community of folks who are coming together, doing this hard emotional work with each other, working on showing up fully in this world, you can join my Facebook community. That's all about healing, spiritual wellness for the LGBTQ community. Yeah, there's, like I said, doing this stuff alone can be tricky, but having support can make it feel a little bit easier. So, reminder, you're not alone in this. Take up some more space today. Think about, if you're watching right now, comment something, a way that you can show up more authentically today, a way that you can show up as your full self today, and see how that feels. All right, thank you for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow. Peace and love. Bye.